Hey everyone, it's Stephanie, and you're tuned into the review of Love at First Flight, Season 1, Episode 4. So, this week takes us to Colorado. All the couples are in Colorado, and we hit a few bumps throughout this episode with different couples, so let's just jump right in. We are going to start with Stephanie and Ryan. So Stephanie and Ryan have a pretty good time in Colorado. If I really could encompass this entire episode with them, I would think that I would call it like the petty argument episode, because I feel like we're still teetering on the end of episode 3, where they were looking for, something to sabotage it. Stephanie was kind of worried that she's falling really fast and she doesn't know if she can be, protected. They're talking about places they're going to live. And this transitions into episode 4, where they are on their way in the car, and she says that she doesn't really know how she feels about Colorado because she ties Colorado to bad events. And he gets very frustrated because he pretty much says that he feels like she's not being honest with him. He feels that, and we're around day 12, day 13, and he feels that she should have said it from the beginning. And so he kind of makes a bigger deal about this than it's supposed to be, than I think it should be, because she keeps saying, hey, I didn't want to just come out and say, I don't like Colorado because I've never been there. Whereas he's saying, the East Coast is not for me. I don't want to live there. The way that Stephanie sees is that, I'm not going to prejudge a place that I don't know, but it's a little different considering you don't know New York and I actually live in New York. Ryan does not live in Colorado. Right now, that's just kind of a place that he's had a good time at. He has friends there and he wants to be there. So she sees it in a completely different way. I would side with her in this way. She didn't want to prejudge it. She didn't want to say, hey, I would never move to Colorado, because I don't know. Is that favorable for her? I don't really think it is right now. But she's willing to be open, and he is kind of harping on, you should have told me, and this is really pulling from his past history. Okay, clearly he's been lied to before, he's been cheated on. And so now it's coming up in a way where this molehill is becoming a mountain. She should have told me. Why did you wait? What else are you hiding? And really, it's not that serious. She is kind of just waiting to see how things matriculate. Things can change. And it's really not that big of a deal. And it's not indicative of, hiding anything or not communicating effectively. I thought it was pretty mature that she is open and willing to just see where it goes. So they eventually kind of come to a stalemate with the conversation. And he finds a silver lining and says, hey, this is our real fight. This is our real, argument that hasn't been, reflective of how they've been kind of coasting along. So I thought that that was pretty good that they were able to turn it around. Like I said, I didn't think it was that big of a deal. Their activity was going to the swamp and having to do something with gators. To be honest, I really tuned out because I was terrified at this part. He was in there with gators, and they had to do something with them. All I know is she's better than me, because she was terrified and she did not want to do them. And you saw her really struggling with that. And he really supported her and saying, hey, let's try something new. Let's do it. Let's figure it out. And she ended up eventually sitting behind him, so he was supporting her, sitting behind him on a 9-foot alligator and putting something on it. It was I would have not done it. So hats off to her for really doing that and just trying to be a team player and them getting through that difficult activity together. We find them at the end of the episode at dinner, kind of just having a good time. And, he brings up, is there anything else that you want to talk about? Is there anything you want to say? And she's saying, honestly, your age kind of worries me. So then they get into another argument that is, it's petty because of the timing. I say that because yes, it might be serious because his age, because he's 5 years younger than her, I think, or 4 years younger than her. His age really worries her. She doesn't know how serious he is, and she doesn't know that she can trust that he's really serious. And she kind of compares him to herself at that age, and she compares him to her younger brother, who's a little bit older than him, which is unfair comparison. You have to look at the person who's showing up and see how they're showing up and judge them based on that. So that's what I would say to Stephanie. You can't just take these past attitudes and past experiences and other people and project that onto Ryan. It's not fair. You're not giving him a chance for showing what he is showing. However, it became this thing again that, she should have said this from the beginning and she's holding stuff back, and why is this, not being said, and how can I, essentially not trust what she's saying. And, once again, Ryan, like, you're blowing it up. It's day 12, it's day 13. Usually at the beginning, even though this is an accelerated process, somebody is not going to meet you and say, oh, you're too young for me, and move on. She kind of jumped in. She's getting to know you. You guys have clearly got along very well, and you're trying to kind of figure each other out. And now as the questions come up, then they can answer them. We've all been in that space where you're in a relationship and you go day to day, and sometimes you have a conversation where you're like, babe, what do you think about this? Or tell me one thing you haven't told me before. And something may come up that is historically, problematic, but it's in the past. And you can't really say, why didn't you say this then? You kind of had to just appreciate and honor, unless it's detrimental, what they're saying now, how they're sharing their feelings with you now, and then approaching it with a healthy and adult kind of communication style. So, the fights that they got into this episode to me were like very petty, very minimal. I guess they have to have something going on or maybe that's kind of just how they're beginning to interact in a way that is more authentic for them. But I don't think it's a big deal. I don't think it's anything that is going to get into the way of like their continued matriculation in this relationship. So that is Stephanie and Ryan in a nutshell. Stephanie and Michael, they are having a wonderful time together as well. You see them like rapping in the car, joking, and they have this new little tiff, like the Stephanie Michael show, and she talks about how he's relaxing her. She even says like, I usually sit up straight and I'm very starched, and now, by hanging out with him, I kind of calmed down and loosened. And so they are seeing how they're gelling together very well. Their activity is going into the woods, and they kind of have to climb up a tree, this huge tree that has like buckets, attached to it, and they each have to climb themselves up in a harness, and there's a coin in each bucket, and I believe there's about 5. And so this is like a real exercise where you get to see their interactions. Stephanie is afraid of heights. She's not about this activity at all, but she's a good sport because she kind of just starts climbing. She's terrified, and Mike is making light of it. He's joking, but he's also supporting her, letting her know that she can do it. She takes a break, and Mike gets up there and he really picks up the slack, and I think he gets about 4 of them, and then he supports her in getting the 5th one. And as Stephanie would, she works smart and she kind of pulls the bucket to her instead of going all the way out to it, which either way, just getting up to this massive tree was a big deal. And she gets it, and then he really, when they went upstairs or up there, they kind of did it, solo, but coming down, they really had to trust each other, and she really had to trust him, because she wasn't about looking down. If you're afraid of heights, you're not going to look down if you're high. And he walked her through essentially how to get down, and at first she was terrified, but then she really started leaning on him and trusting that he would, lead her to safety. And he did. And she was really happy. And at the end of that, she was like, I'm on Team Michael now, because now I know I can trust him to like be a leader, and also to make sure that I'm safe and taken care of. And so it was really good to see those walls. Those walls are coming down for her. She's still going to be guarded. You don't get rid of being guarded for 31 years with 10 days of inactivity, but she's starting to loosen up and really take advantage of like all the aspects of him, and how great he is, and he's showing a different side of himself. He's not just being the funny jokester that sometimes rubs her the wrong way. You also see them have another conversation in the car later on in this episode where they talk about faith, which is huge for the both of them, and it is huge for a lot of couples, being similarly based in the same type of faith, and him talking about his experience and his journey, literally she lit up with that, because it's very important for her. That's something that she's definitely going to want in a husband, and him speaking freely about it without ego and without any type of, I need to feel cool or anything like that, really made her happy. You could see that she kind of literally moved even closer to him and connected with him in a different way, because that's the stuff that's lasting. Yes, we want our spouses or significant others to be attractive, and you want to have fun and all these things, but a lot of the things that we say often when we want to be in a relationship are not the things that are lasting. A lot of people will say, oh, I just want to wake up with my best friend. Okay, well, that's sweet. But that's, beyond that, there's a lot of other stuff that you have to really gel on that isn't necessarily that surface stuff, albeit important. So it was good to see them have a good time, and they went to tea. He didn't really want to do it, but she wanted to do it, and she was so excited to do it, and he was a good sport about it. And they talked about, at that time, being in a space where they're seeing each other in a different light, kind of progressively moving forward and, sparking that romantic chemistry. So I am so happy to see that from the two of them, and seeing them work together instead of kind of bumping heads, because they have both strong personalities, so you can see that happening, but I'm glad to see the softening. So that's Stephanie and Michael. Speaking of bumping heads, we have Jenna and Cale. So Jenna and Cale struggled through this episode as well. They go and they do something in the woods. They carve something. I think it was like a love totem or something like that. Cale pretty much was still pissed about what happened before, when they kind of like sparked at that conversation that was supposed to be good. So he's still pissed, and he's pretty much salty, all the way to the salt rooms, pun intended, because they do another activity later on where it's like an inhalant salt room, and they have a foot soak, and it's supposed to, take all your toxins out and improve your airways, and it's a very relaxing place. I actually took my husband there for his birthday like a few years ago, where you take all that stuff in and you relax, and it's supposed to do a lot for you health wise. Cale, he played along this time, but he wasn't really happy to be there. He was still salty about not being there, their interaction before, and he was kind of making passive aggressive digs. And throughout the carving, they accomplished their missions, but throughout the carving activity, what he was saying was, this is kind of like me and Jenna, and things are tough. And you see Jenna kind of like wanting to turn the key for this ignition. It's almost like, if any of my northerners know, because I'm originally from Chicago, when you have your car sitting in the snow all night long and you turn it on, you don't just turn on and go. You're not gonna get very far. You have to like turn it on and warm it up. But oftentimes, if your battery is dead, or you have to kind of give it a few clinks, you have to turn it on, and you get that like, I'm almost gonna turn over, but I don't. So Cale was in that space where you could see his good attitude was pushing him to be, somewhat active, but he wouldn't just quite turn over and just turn on and move on. And Jenna was just kind of like, let's turn the car on and just move on. Like, let's move on. I appreciate her attitude for that, because she doesn't want to stay in the same space. Maybe they hadn't really cleared the air as much, but now I put that on Cale. Cale has to be a grown up and just talk about what he needs to talk about. And if he's still feeling some type of way, which they discussed before, it has to be something that he learns to communicate effectively. He has to say, hey, you know what? I'm still kind of feeling frustrated. I don't want to be in this space, but I'm finding that we're in this space and I don't really know how to shake it off. Like, you have to do something, but passive aggressive digs and kind of still being timid and not really engaging, regardless of why that is not conducive to a good experience. So, they've both been frustrated these first few episodes. Cale has operated at, his best, and she has not, and vice versa. We're seeing that. So I'm looking forward to seeing them get in the same space where they enjoy not only the activity, but they begin to enjoy each other. I think it was episode 1 or 2 where they got caught in the tiny house and they enjoyed each other for like 5 seconds. And so we see it, we know it's there, we want to see it again. So that is Jenna and Cale. Now Alma and Michael. So Alma and Michael, they do an activity that is kind of like it's something in the forest. All I remember is snow, something in the forest, racing to each segment. I think they have buckets or something like that, but in the buckets, because what they're working on and what I'm starting to realize is each activity is synonymous to what the couples need to work on and where they are in their chemistry. So clearly, Alma has been beating a dead horse about this, open up, open up, open up. And you can see that Mike is a little more anxious about it, and he has some things going on that you can clearly see. You can tell in his body language and his affect, but he's not really comfortable sharing yet. And so almost the opposite. She's been talking about her father and how he abandoned them, and she just kind of blurts it out, and that's her. So she's been wanting him to mimic her, and he's not going to mimic her because he's not the same person. And so she's been kind of wanting and watching and asking him to be open. So they go to each, little area that has a question that's supposed to, increase their depth of their connection. And, Alma, as per usual, she answers the question, whatever it is. Nothing kind of, shakes her, or nothing makes her uncomfortable. She just is okay with being open. And we can see that Mike is wanting to get into it, but he's not really ready. So his questions or his answers tend to be a little more surface. I think one of the questions was like, what's your biggest regret? And his was like, not moving away to college. And Alma in the confessional is like, really? Like, that's your biggest regret? So we can see clearly, that he's just not in the space that he's ready to share that yet. As the episode continues on, this comes back again, because this is something that is frustrating for him, where they're now having dinner, and she says, I really want to get back to that place where I felt that spark with you, and I've been asking you to be open. And for me, that was a little hard to watch, because here's the thing. Although he does need to be open, it is not going to happen if he doesn't feel comfortable enough. I mean, it did. If you saw the episode, it did happen, but just for future reference, I would advise you all, if you have a relationship or friendship or anything that requires you to increase the depth of that relationship, create an environment where that person is comfortable. Beating them down about it or constantly telling them about it is not going to change anything, because it's an emotional thing. It's not a mental thing. Saying, I'm here for you, or you can tell me anything. Like, they know that. They logically know that. There's an emotional block that is causing the lack of connection. It's not something to do, it's something to feel. So remember that. If you are in a space with your spouse where you feel like they're not connecting with you, or they're not saying something, be responsible for what you can be responsible for, which is creating the environment to share, and then let it happen. If it doesn't, that's a different video, but let it happen. So we eventually see that Mike said that he's going to try, and he really pushes himself. So gold star for Mike, because I know that was not easy, especially with what you shared. But he pushes himself to share that, his brother committed suicide, which I had no words. That's probably the worst thing that you can experience. And, there's a lot of things that are unresolved, and a lot of unanswered questions, and a lot of emotion that really doesn't go away. And so for him to share that with someone who he's known for 13 days, and I always remember the day thing, because sometimes we get so caught up in the TV aspect of it, and we forget these are real people with real things going on, and that this is because we have been watching it for weeks. It hasn't been weeks for them. For us, we watch these shows and they span about 3 to 4 months, but it's 2 weeks for them, or a week and a half. So for him to share something like that was huge, because that's a major thing, and that's not something to play with, and that's not something he has to offer up for TV or whatever the case may be. So gold star for you, Mike. And I'm glad that she received it well, which I knew, because she seems like a very sweet person, that she would receive it well, and that will create a bond for them that they can take with them as they continue on this process. So that's all that I have. I think the couples are in pretty good shape. I'm looking forward to seeing how they continue to grow together. But, so far so good. We've had some bumps in the road, but such is life, such is relationships. So let me know what you think. As always, comment, like, and share, and I'll see you for the next review. Have a great day.